Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Landis, we were almost late to start the show because you and I were swearing and listing off people that we think are kind of jerkholes. And maybe we'll reveal who we think those people are at the end of the show. Should we do that? Is that a good tease?
Yeah, sure. Including us. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just so people know how we go about this here. We were listing off people that were like, I think that person's kind of a jerkhole. And then Bill was like, but I'm a jerkhole. And I was like, but I'm a jerkhole. So like, we get it. We know what's going on here. We're so excited that you're here with us. I just want to emphasize every show. I don't want to pander to this audience, Bill, ever, because it's too educated and dedicated and loyal to pander to this Northern audience. But I just want to always be grateful for them. Can we just stop? It's not Thanksgiving week yet, but aren't we grateful for these folks, Bill, who come and join us and care about Northern ball?
Yeah, incredibly grateful. Also, it's okay to express your thanks even when it's not Thanksgiving week. I think that'd be great for everybody if we could embrace that idea a little more. So thank you.
Yeah. So thank you guys for being here. We're just so excited to be doing it. And we have so much to talk about. We're kind of not doing our normal Monday because we want to run through all our teams and talk about our teams, but we're going to do it through the lens of head coaches. And we're doing this in part because Curt Cignetti did get paid over the weekend. And we were trying to figure out how much we should talk about that on Saturday. We kind of didn't, but I do think we want to talk about it now. His new 8-year extension and what that means for Indiana, what it means for Northern college football, where it fits in. But we also want to talk about everybody. There's like a lot of stuff happening with coaches right now. Landis, like Luke Fickell just fired his handpicked offensive coordinator that he went out and got when he took over at Wisconsin. Chris Kleiman has talked about in the past week, he's had some off-field things that have been difficult for him, family related, and he got emotional after Kansas State's loss to Arizona State on Saturday. And I think there's just like real human stuff there. Lance Leipold, Kansas has had a very disappointing year. Lance Leipold, the entire time, Landis has sort of doubled down on we're not changing, and now Kansas is playing great and shaking up college football because Lance Leipold didn't waver at all, right?
Yeah, it makes me like Brent Yormark needs to like suspend Lance Leipold just so Kansas stops winning games and blowing up the Big 12 race.
Deion Sanders had everybody, like a lot of people in the sport, coming after him at the beginning of the year, and Colorado is playing great football and controls its path to the playoff. And that is an unbelievable story. There are just like some real coaching things going on that we want to acknowledge. So we'll get through all of our 28 Northern teams. That's what is really important to us, right? On Mondays and Thursdays, that we're comprehensive. So we're hitting everybody who's here with us. You get to hear a little bit about your team if you're here.
Yeah, and we like to approach that from different angles, and we're doing it from the head coaching perspective this week. It's like I don't know what do you want to call it. It's like a check-in, I think, maybe on how they're doing. Good, okay. No, not,
good, okay,
not,
iffy.
Yeah,
we don't want to use the word bad because we're just swell fellas. We're jerkholes sometimes, but we're also swell fellas other times. So yeah, we're not giving like this isn't comprehensive A- or something out of 1,000, but like, yeah, good, okay, or iffy. I don't know. We'll do that for every team. And we did talk about like at the end of the year, we want to do that for every program in a more comprehensive way and really grade everybody against themselves. I do think that's really important to us here on this show, Landis, to help establish standards for teams. Not everybody's standard is the same. Some teams chase national titles. Some would be great to get in the playoff mix. Some are excited if they can win 8 games, and all of that is very reasonable. And I think it's really important to establish what you're trying to be, what you should be, and then did you make it? And we'll do that for every team when the season ends, right? That's our plan.
That is our plan. Yeah, it's going to be quite the endeavor. But I do like we've never really done that. That was like one of the early things we said when we started the show was we wanted to kind of like establish that baseline for all 28 of our teams. And then, the season just happened and we never really got around to it. So.
Well, that's an off-season project. Project.
Yeah.
You want one? You good?
Yeah, I think. Listen, $72 million. We should get real cigarettes.
I don't know. Are you allowed to smoke on a YouTube show? I don't know what the rule. Have you ever smoked before? Do you smoke? Have you ever smoked?
I don't like actively. I have, but before, yeah.
We used to do a thing my freshman year. We would go on Sunday night. We called it Sunday night smokeout in our dorm, and everybody would like go smoke a cigarette outside the dorm because you were 18 and you were in college and you could do that kind of thing. And I would take like 3 drags and then go into the lobby and pass out on the couch because like 3 hits of nicotine was like my little innocent body like couldn't handle it and the world was spinning. And I was like, is nicotine this like a hard drug? This is it. Like, I think I have to go to the hospital. And it was like 3 of these. So ever since then, it's pretty much been candy cigarettes, but we got $72 million worth of them. So our coaching stuff, we'll still have the South Cram-o-meter because how can you have a Monday without cramming it? And our top 11.5 rankings. But we're going to go through all the coaches. We're going to start with Curt Cignetti, Bill, who I had said earlier in the year, give him a Mel Tucker contract. And this is pretty close. Mel Tucker this is, by the way, credit to Indiana. When you're doing this kind of thing, you have to get the official contract signed before the Ohio State game. Michigan State did not manage to do that in 2021 when Mel Tucker and and Michigan State started 8-0. They were 9-1 and number 7 in the college football playoff ratings when the reports came out that they were working on a long-term extension. Then they came into Columbus and lost 56-7 to Ohio State. And then after that game, they officially announced a 10-year, $95 million contract that at the time made Mel Tucker the second highest paid coach in college football, only behind Nick Saban, $9.5 million a year. This time, Indiana is 10-0, better than Michigan State was. They are number 5 in the playoff rankings, better than Michigan State was. They got this done officially before Ohio State, so it's all good vibes. And it's $9 million a year. Now it's a little like there's a little bit of this, like some people are reporting it as $8 million a year. And when they do in the rankings stuff, it's $8 million a year, but they also give him $1 million every time he doesn't leave. So that's $9 million a year. So $9 million a year is way up there among Northern college football coaches. Bill, our 28, he's now second behind Ryan Day. What do you think of Curt Cignetti getting that much worth of cigs, man? That's a lot of cigs. That's a lot of packs.
It's a lot of cigs. Yeah. No, I mean that's the state of play, right? If you want to keep your guy, then that's what you have to pay. Like I don't know actually if anyone would have come out with a $10 million contract offer for Curt Cignetti in this offseason, but teams were definitely going to come after him aggressively, right? I think that was practically a guarantee. So Indiana had to anticipate that aggression and then match what it thought it was going to be. And this is the number that it landed on for a guy who's been a perennial winner. It's not like that's the difference between this and the Mel Tucker deal. It's like Mel Tucker had never demonstrated an ability to win at that level prior to him doing it that 1 year at Michigan State. And then they locked him up. Like Curt Cignetti has won everywhere he's been. Right. And I get that it's different now that he's at Indiana and he's at a power program, but I think it's pretty clear that his methods of building a program and trying to win games are a little tried and true, and they're working in Indiana. So I feel much safer banking on that than I did Michigan State banking on Mel Tucker at the time. And
Coach O had been fired at LSU, and a lot of that Mel Tucker stuff there felt preventative by Michigan State. A little bit of, I don't want to say desperate, but more about we can't lose our guy. And from the reporting on this, and Zach Osterman, who's been all over this, covering Indiana at the Indy Star, is going to be probably on the show on Wednesday, right? Is that probably the plan?
That is the plan.
Yeah. So we're going to have a whole Ohio State Indiana preview on Wednesday. But he was saying that AD Scott Dolson and the university president were kind of talking about this with Cignetti, like almost from the jump, and they doubled his salary. But I think this is the right way to go about this, that to throw money at a guy to get him to come, to overpay somebody that you don't know, it to me is very different than now you're here, we know you, we understand your ways are successful, but we've also seen under the hood, right? And so, and this does not, at least there's not a specific, and I'll use the word threat that looming out there. Like Billy Napier at Florida is not fired. In fact, they announced they're keeping him. Like there's not a job that was like, holy moly, for sure. That program's going to come for Curt Cignetti. So Indiana, that's more for the right reasons. It's not out of fear. It's out of commitment. So there is nothing I don't like about this. And I think it is the right number. And I do think like it shows the commitment of Indiana, which everybody is saying there's going to be a commitment to potentially a rebuild of a Memorial Stadium, like working that up. They obviously are more committed to NIL. Like, this is what the money is for. But it's not as much for like, we're desperately trying to get some offensive coordinator that we think is good. This is a guy that has put it down 10-0, and they doubled his salary now. So like in the North right now, he's second. So anyway, I'm going to cite a bunch of Northern coach pay. Fran Brown at Syracuse, David Barnett, Northwestern, Bill O'Brien, Boston College, Kalani Sitake, BYU. Private institutions we don't know, at least on the USA Today salary database, okay? So we do have 24 of the 28 we have salaries, though. Curt Cignetti previously at 4.25 a year was 21st. No, he's actually 20th. He was 20th out of the 24, okay? Now he's second. It's doubled. And he said on one of the pregame shows, like, why am I doing this? He called Indiana an emerging superpower. There's nothing I don't like about this. And here's the thing, too. This is one of these things. This is like an off-season topic. This is the kind of thing that Stephen Godfrey and I would go an hour and a half on. This is a national sport and a regional sport at the same time. But the SEC as a regional sport is more desperate and is more willing to throw money around and is more willing to fire people and eat buyouts and all that kind of thing. But it affects the market. So even though Curt Cignetti is the second highest paid coach in the North right now, $9 million a year, he'd be tied for 8th in the SEC. So Josh Heupel is making $9 million a year at Tennessee. Lane Kiffin is making $9 million a year at Ole Miss. Mark Stoops is making $9 million a year at Kentucky. And Brian Kelly and Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart are all making more than this. So this is a lot of money up here, of course. But he's better at this than Josh Heupel is. And he's better at this than Mark Stoops is at Kentucky. Yeah. So you also, as much as I dislike that world and I don't love the North having to react to that, you have to keep up with it. It is the market. So this is not an overpay. And as much as we end up talking about this a lot, head coaches are worth it. A great head coach is, quote, worth it. Nick Saban probably should have made $40 million a year at Alabama for what he did for that program and that university. It's crazy, but like the stuff in the middle, right? Like blowing money on stupid stuff and like thinking you have to have a $2 million coordinator. Like there's guys out there head coaches are worth it. This is all good. I don't even know what I could disagree with about this for Indiana. It's all good. Let's go Hoosiers into the future as an emerging superpower with this guy driving the ship.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm not even necessarily interested in playing devil's advocate all that much. I guess the one thing is you don't know yet how Curt Cignetti will continue to build the roster moving forward. It's great that Indiana has committed to the NIL resources that are going to be necessary, because Indiana is going to have to be a transfer portal team. I just don't know the recruiting footprint, having to compete with Ohio State regionally. I just don't think you're ever going to be able to build the whole thing through high school recruiting. So you're going to have to be aggressive in the transfer portal. And they did a great job this offseason by identifying winning players, right? And I think that's a good strategy moving forward. But he also was able to bring like the best of his James Madison roster with him. Yeah, obviously he won't be able to do that moving forward. So I feel confident in his ability to do that. But if there's anybody saying like, are you sure that's going to be able to replicate this year over year? Like I do think it's a fair question, but I definitely believe in it.
We've talked about this before, and we're going to do this for every one of our Northern programs. Your top 30, how many came in the transfer portal? How many came through high school recruiting? Indiana's top 30 in snaps this year, 18 through the portal this year, 23 through the portal overall, only 7 high school guys. Of the 18 guys in the portal who are among their top 30 right now, 9 are JMU. Mm-hmm. So it's basically 2 teams. You smash 2 teams together. The best of what was there at Indiana. You got Ohio's quarterback and a couple other MAC guys. And then you brought in like the best of JMU. That was a really good team last year. So, but also it's one of those things. And this is like, to me, is a lot of this stuff, like with baseball contracts, whatever. It's like, oh man, we gave this guy a deal and he's going to be 39 years old by the last year of his deal. He's going to make $30 million a year. It's like, well, what are you supposed to do? To get the good at the beginning of the contract, you're going to have to pay a bloated thing at the end and just eat it. That's the way the market works. you can't ask the question. Like Indiana couldn't say, I'm not sure. Like that wasn't an option, because not sure is how Curt Cignetti winds up at LSU, right? So this is, and I think you're about as sure as you can be about a first-year coach. So you've got to do this. So congratulations to Curt Cignetti in Indiana. Do you think emerging superpower is too much? Or do you think that, what?
Yeah, I do.
Why would I don't think it's too much.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like the confidence, but maybe just drop the super. I think emerging power would have been fine.
You know what? I need to take that back. I said that wrong. I apologize. I think I said that Curt Cignetti said they're an emerging superpower.
Yeah.
And I misquoted him. They're not an emerging superpower. They're the emerging superpower.
That's right.
There's one. There's room for one. So we're rating all the coaches by good, okay, or iffy. What did you say? What'd you say for Curt Cignetti? I think I said good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good on Sigs. Yeah.
You're good?
Yeah.
You gave him a good? Oh.
I did give him a good, yeah.
All right. Congrats. Oh, good. A good for me and a good for you. I mean, that's even more valuable than $72 million. What can money buy you? But like the respect of Kings of the North, even though we can't get him on the show. But like, that would be, we've had Mike Kadick. This is Mike Kadick's boss. Got $72 million.
What did Mike Kadick get?
Eternal respect and admiration from the Neal fan base. He'll never buy a beer in Bloomington again, which is a good thing. All right. So good for Indiana. They're set at head coach. All right, let's go to Wisconsin. Would you say that you had been calling for Phil Longo to be fired, or is that too strong?
Yeah, probably. Like, or just like I definitely wasn't alone in my acknowledgement of that marriage from the jump seeming like an odd decision by Luke Fickell, and then there was nothing over the course of the nearly 2 years together that would suggest otherwise, or that things were going to get better in the future. So Luke Fickell fired him.
So you want to own that you got Phil Longo fired, or no? Is that too much?
I will not own that. I would first and foremost give credit to the discerning Wisconsin fan base who knew all along this was a bad idea.
All along. So but there was a 2-week stretch in the middle of the season where I was like, I don't know. And you were like, I guess maybe, for like 2 weeks. And then it was like, nope. But again, those 2 weeks were against like Purdue and Northwestern, or whatever it was, right?
Purdue and Rutgers without its 5 best defensive players. Yeah.
Oh,
but other than that, it was great.
Oh.
Other than that, it was great.
So I can remember, and people know that, like, I can remember when I was talking to Luke when he was at Ohio State about wanting to be a head coach. And I always think it's so interesting, like when you're defensive minded coach, it's like, well, what are you going to do on offense? And back then he was like, well, I think I'd want a dual threat quarterback who can move around a little bit. We can spread the field. Like that's kind of where the sport was, right? When he decided to go to Cincinnati. And then this was a choice. He lured Phil Longo away from North Carolina to come run this version of the air raid and implement it at Wisconsin. I still like the idea, because the whole point to me was Wisconsin wasn't happy with the status quo. So he almost went opposite the status quo, but I still tried to jam it together with a little bit of quo. Like, I don't know, like 23% quo, 77% new. Like, was that because, do you disagree with the idea that, because like firing Paul Chryst wasn't Paul Chryst is a bumbling fool that can't run a program. It was like Paul Chryst has a ceiling. And the Wisconsin way has a ceiling. And in the new world, we want to raise our ceiling. So we're getting a coach who's made the playoff. And then that coach comes in with the mandate to raise the ceiling. So he says, I'm doing something way different with our offense. Here comes a version of the air raid. I totally get that attempt. Do you not even like the attempt?
No, I like the attempt. I don't mind the thought there of wanting to find a way to elevate the previous versions of the Wisconsin offense, or like try to find a way to marry the past with what you consider to be the future, I think that's the right inclination. I just think it was the wrong guy to do it. And also probably far too much of a lean in a direction of the air raid and not enough kind of remembering what got you there for Wisconsin. Like, you have to be cognizant of what Wisconsin is able to get personnel wise and understand that, like, what Phil Longo wants to do offensively just is not going to jive with the players you're able to get. And Madison, you can get big people and you can get running backs and you can probably get better quarterbacks than Wisconsin has had previously. But I don't know that you're going to be able to rely on that year after year to be like a team that goes full air raid. You have to understand who you are and then find ways to push that forward. So like that, like Luke Fickell is a tremendous hire, I think, for that. He just, I think, made a poor decision in trying to push the offense in that direction, but maybe a little too quickly or just with the wrong guy, wrong philosophy generally. Like they should not just start going back to like I formation and run the ball 70% of the time or whatever. Although I did find it somewhat amusing that Luke Fickell got hired, made this decision to push Wisconsin away from that style of offense, and then Michigan won the national championship, right? So it's like,
yeah,
maybe
never work. Oh no, it worked.
So I think there is a modern offense that still is like run first, built around physicality and what Wisconsin I think would be able to recruit that can get Wisconsin to where it wants to go. This just wasn't it.
Okay. So I'm not asking for a name, but you think like a guy who understands that, but they still will maybe emphasize the passing game a little more than they have historically.
Yeah.
Prioritize quarterback recruiting, still maybe be really active. And this is one of those where I think Phil or Luke Fickell like wants to recruit quarterbacks. They got maybe Matoyer up from Texas, who might be the next guy up there. And they just had the kid that just decommitted from Michigan.
Evan Carter.
It's not
Evan Carter. Evan Carter is
I think Evan Carter is a Backstreet Boy. Is that correct?
He's a baseball player, but I also thought he was a football recruit.
I'm pretty sure it's a Backstreet Boy, Bill. I don't know what to tell you. Carter Smith.
Nick Carter Smith. Nick Carter's Backstreet Boy.
But who's Evan Carter's Nick Carter's brother? Anyway.
Aaron Carter is Nick Carter's brother.
Oh, sorry. So anyway, but I also think that's not a bad place for portal quarterbacks. I don't know that that's a bad. And again, like, we're just going to use Curtis Work a million times now because as soon as one thing works, it's like, oh, everybody should do the thing that worked for one team. Why can't it work for 30 teams? But that's not a bad plan there. Like running backs, offensive linemen, play good defense, portal QB, and, of course, then still try at receiver, but understand that, like, hey, a portal QB, you're not going to just be a handoff turnstile here, but also we might not have the word raid or air in our system.
Yeah.
Maybe you can keep raid. The cheese raid? How about the cheese raid? Could you call it the cheese raid?
The curd raid. Yeah.
Oh, the curd raid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the air curd? No. The curd raid. Yeah, the curd raid. Okay, let's make those shirts.
Do you think what's your like ideal profile of what you'd like to see in terms of experience, not necessarily even like play style? Do you think like the thing we don't know, I guess, is like what the money allotment would be for this position.
Yeah.
But is it like go get the best established play caller you can get? Is it go get like Jeff Hafley on the offensive side, which is like an up and coming defensive assistant in the NFL who hasn't had the opportunity to call plays yet? Or is there like a guy in college that might not have the experience, but you think has upside? Like, what do you have a lean?
Yeah, I don't know that. Like, it's probably not the Cade Bell, Zach Lujan, super young coordinator in his 30s that's never done it at this level. Because like they kind of took their shot, right? This is shot number 2. It might be a little more like Tim Lester, like the eye, like that like I've done this before. Competence. We understand we want to be creative, but there's also kind of a commitment to this, and you've had some success doing it. I think I might be more Tim Lester than Cade Bell for this situation.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm with you. I don't know. There are some obvious, I think, candidates, and they kind of fit. Like Brennan Marion at UNLV, I think would be like a name that people are going to mention a lot. He is like young but also experienced and as a play caller. Gino Guidili was Luke's OC is last year at Cincinnati. He's now the quarterback's coach at Notre Dame. So he has play calling experience. He's also, I don't think copy paste Notre Dame's offense is a bad idea for Wisconsin if you want to do that moving forward, but what Notre Dame currently is. I was just like mulling around some names in my brain. It's like, it's just me thinking of stuff. I don't have, scoop on what Wisconsin's doing. Tino Sunseri is Indiana's quarterback's coach and I think co-offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
I think
Juju Lewis's friend.
He's got some juice as a recruiter. He was on the Alabama staff when Sark was the OC there, and has been with Siggs and Mike Shanahan for a couple of years. He would be like a first-time full-time play caller, but I don't know that I'd hate that either.
Yeah, it's just I do think you can't. They've kind of shot for the moon, so now I think maybe you shoot for like the top of the trees. I don't think you can try a moonshot again, right? That I think like when you're Pat Narduzzi and like you've been a little bit stale offensively, then it's like, let's bring in this Cade Bell guy and see what happens. But I think like, again, Phil Longo was that for Wisconsin. So I think they've got to be a little more circumspect about it. All right. So where are you on Fickell on the good, okay, iffy rating scale?
I'm okay. Because I think this was a misstep, right? He took a swing. The swing did not work. So now he has to reassess, and so I don't think you can say it's been good. Like we're having this conversation on the heels of Wisconsin's defense, like playing an awesome game against Oregon. And I think there are many reasons to be excited about where Wisconsin will go defensively with Luke Fickell running the show there. But now he's got to get this right. Like this to me, this next hire will determine Luke Fickell's staying power in Madison, in my opinion. I don't think you can miss twice if you're Luke Fickell. So I feel okay about where he's at.
And this is one of those where it's like, I completely was behind it. Totally get it. But it missed. So like you don't just get a mulligan. So it is for a guy who made the playoff as a group of 5 team, which is practically a miracle and was a huge hire for Wisconsin. Like that is a mark against it. So I agree with you. It's hard to be good right now. I don't think this is like Luke is like in trouble, but it's like, all right, now you have something to get right. And it is frustrating that I think is exactly your point, that they played pretty much right there with the number 1 team in the country for 60 minutes. And if the offense was like a scooch better, they might have had a chance to win that game. And then you look at yourself and say, what are we doing? And we talked about this plenty on Saturday night that, again, Tyler Van Dyke is hurt and you're playing Braden Locke, and Will Pauling was hurt in that game. And you've had, stuff in the running back room, but still it's like, we couldn't be a little bit better to give ourselves more of a chance there. They had a bad penalty against them that hurt them. But I think that's the reality. You look in the mirror, like how close you were, and one side of the ball is holding you back, so they make a move. Luke Fickell, okay for both of us. We're not going to go this long on everybody because it would be a 9-hour show, and Bill won't let me do that. So let's go through.
Do you know, just like I think maybe to like crystallize this a little bit, because like Luke Fickell's a really good head coach, and he's only in the tail end of his second year. Yeah, this, in my opinion, this wasn't a rebuild. This was like a take a thing that was already pretty good and make it better. To be 13-11. 24 games into that tenure, I actually think is pretty bad. And they're currently 5-5 with no guarantees of winning their next 2 games. And Wisconsin hasn't had a losing season since 2001. Like this is a program that has higher aspirations than what it has been, but it has also been a consistent winning program. And right now, under Luke Fickell, it is not winning at the level that it is accustomed to. Like I actually, this is like a pretty potentially like kind of hot situation, I think, for Luke.
Well, but I think, I mean, when you make a hire like that and you make a commitment like that, like that's a 5-year plan, I think is a 5-year plan, because this guy can do it. But I also think when you try to raise your ceiling, you are in danger of lowering your floor, which is exactly what happened. But the administration was on board with this idea, because if you really want to guarantee, they could have guaranteed 8-4 into perpetuity and maybe trying to make a run at some 9-3s and 10-2s. But although now the Big Ten West is going away, and okay, now here comes Oregon. We might have to play them sometimes. And this was a tough schedule, by the way, too. And Luke knew this going in. This schedule this year is not easy. So they knew all of this. But I don't think as an administration, you can be like, we want to swing. We're hiring you, but your hire The firing of the old guy and hiring you at all to begin with is a swing. And then we want you to take a swing and then be like, oh, your swing missed. I don't know, brother. Like I think you have to give him another at bat. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
But you're creeping towards iffy. When you start throwing out 13 and 11, which is just a fact, fancy stats. Welcome back, fancy stats, Landis. That's a creep towards iffy a little bit.
It is a little bit of a creep toward iffy. Yeah. They're losing. Like Wisconsin, whatever you think of Wisconsin and what it can be, like it doesn't lose. And they're losing.
Right. But they're losing because they tried to win more and it didn't work. I think, and now this is the thing, boy, now you're making me do a 9-hour show. Chief Content Officer, don't yell at me when you do this to me. When you bring up an interesting point right when I'm ready to move on from Wisconsin, I think Luke Fickell could be Paul Chryst in his sleep. So if you're ready to be 8-4, but also the Big Ten West went away and the schedule's going to be tougher and you would like to be in the playoff mix, at least in the discussion, I think at least 3 or 4 years out of 10, if you're Wisconsin, to feel going in that you have a chance at it and then win a couple games to give your fans that feeling. But then, by the way, you're 5-5 and 3 of your losses are to Oregon, Penn State, and Alabama. So like, yes, but also 3 of your losses are to Oregon, Penn State, and Alabama is also part of that. And then USC is a tire fire this year, but also you had to go to California for a Big Ten game and play at USC that just has more skill than you. And then the Iowa loss was really bad. But Paul Chryst, show Paul Chryst the schedule where he played Alabama, Oregon, and Penn State in the regular season, right? So I'm just trying to pull you back from iffy. Can you just be solidly okay on this? Because all this context matters, but I don't think we can talk about some context without the other context.
Yeah, I'm a fairly solid okay. I'm an okay, but like I'm leaning a little more toward iffy than I am toward good. Certainly, you make a good point about this.
You can't lean towards good. You can't lean towards good. There's no lean towards good. It's a good
You're right
5-5.
Yeah.
There's no lean.
I guess though they're. I'm going to mention this a few times probably throughout this show. Like their preseason win total was 6.5. They have 5 wins. It's not like they're woefully underperforming to what outside expectations were, right. But he's also like lost to Northwestern. He's lost to Iowa twice, and he lost to a bad Indiana team last year. It's not like he's only losing to good teams,
right? With quarterback injuries, 2 years of quarterback injuries.
Yeah, with a room that was reshaped by Phil Longo. Like it's like. So that's part of the evaluation here too. It's like not only did the offense think like Phil Longo got unlucky with quarterback injuries, but then like the other people he put in the room weren't good enough for Wisconsin. Maybe with the exception of maybe Matoyer, we'll see what he becomes.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot. Do you want me to do? Just tell me. You tell me. Do you want me to do an hour? Do we want to do an hour Wisconsin show right now? I'm deep. I'm knee deep in cheese right now. I could do this all day, but people tell me that we're not allowed to do a 3-hour show. My God, this is interesting. Now I just want the offseason to get here. So it's like, oh, these games get in the way of deep discussions about Wisconsin's shaping of their quarterback room. Thanks, fancy stats. Can we move on now, or do you have more great points to bring up about a 5-5 team that's number 2 on our list?
No, we can move forward, and
we may move forward.
I look forward to the Wisconsin show in the offseason. It'll be a good one.
My God, we're 15 minutes over in the first segment. Fancy stats, stop being interesting. I'll just tell you again, you won't let me yet say the nickname I have for another host out there in the world who is just so dryly boring to me. That guy needs a fancy stats in his life because you just invigorate me when you drop this stuff in. By the way, okay. Sharon Moore, he's good, right? See, this is where we are now. Sharon Moore, good. Jonathan Smith, good. Bill O'Brien, good. Because we gave all our time to Wisconsin.
Just run through them, yeah.
All right, Sharon Moore, he's the Michigan coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's famous. As a reminder, and our guy John would reminds us of this. Michigan has lost 5 games. Here are their losses. Number 1, Oregon. Number 3, Texas. Number 5, Indiana. 3 of the top 5 teams in the country. Number 24, Illinois, and Washington on the road. And Washington, when they play at their place, they're undefeated. And then when they go on the road, they're terrible. So like that's who they are. So by the way, everybody wants Michigan to be better. Like I just can't tell when we're allowed to count good losses and when we're not. And again, maybe I wouldn't characterize these as good losses, but they're losses to good teams. Are we supposed to count them in the Big Ten, or is that only SEC math? Do you know? Is there
I actually don't know.
Is there a federal standard for college football math? Like, is there a single textbook, or does every state have their own textbook when it comes to college football math? Because SEC math, I don't know if that travels, brother.
Do we want to have a Department of Education conversation?
Okay. You won't let me do a 4-hour show. So the thing that they are in trouble here a little bit is this quarterback thing, right? So that there was some kind of report, and it's like the report is not good enough to go by, that they offered Bryce Underwood, the number one recruit in this class, who's from Michigan, has committed to LSU, $10 million. Like, I wouldn't feel good reporting that, but I will report. I'll regurgitate the fact that Bryce Underwood made a graphic about being reportedly number one. He made a graphic that said number one quarterback likely to decline Michigan $10.5 million offer. So he put that out into the world. And in the process, Carter Smith, the quarterback that had committed in their class, decommitted during their pursuit of Bryce Underwood. And now Carter Smith was visiting Wisconsin over the weekend. They probably have to change offensive coordinators, but they also have to get this sorted out. And like at the moment, I am probably willing to be more forgiving than most for this Michigan season because of the chaos, because of the craziness, because of the schedule, because Michigan fans should still be soaking in the vibes of a national championship that doesn't wear off in 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
But now they got to get this stuff sorted out. And like, this is a little dicey at the moment, is it not? So Sharon Moore, like, it makes me wonder about stuff.
Yeah. I think, I guess I'm willing to give some benefit of the doubt relative to the timing of all of this, right? Like Sharon Moore in the end, I think leaned far too much on what was familiar to him when organizing his first staff. He's not the first young new head coach to do that. Totally. But he needs to fix it. Right. So that's, I'm okay because of that, because I am willing to give him, I guess, and what does it matter what I give him, but like the runway to figure that out. And it's definitely true about offensive coordinator. I think you could also say it might be true about defensive coordinator. I think he needs to rethink his entire coaching staff. I kind of, him as a game manager, there's some encouraging stuff in there from last year when he had the coach in place to Jim Harbaugh. There's some stuff this year that is less encouraging when you talk about like challenges and timeouts and clock management and all that stuff. Like he has to grow, but he's a young head coach. Like you knew that when you hired him. If you're Michigan, you have to accept some of that. Because that's the position you chose to put yourself in. I think whether or not that number of $10 million is real, there's probably at least some truth to it. So if Sharon Moore is able to like organize some NIL situations to get that kind of offer together for Bryce Underwood, even if it doesn't work, that actually in some respects, I think is encouraging about him being able to navigate like modern roster building. I think maybe he might even push Michigan forward a little bit in that regard with being more aggressive with NIL and transfers and recruiting different types of high school players maybe than Jim Harbaugh was recruiting. So it's fine. Like I don't think we are at the point to say like this was a huge mistake. There's no way Michigan's going to recover from this. I wouldn't say it's good, but I think it's okay.
I think it's okay. It's a huge off season, and it's almost like you can't rate this right now, but very much on alert for coaching staff moves in the offseason. And you make a very good point. It is common, especially in a little bit of a chaotic situation, to lean on the familiar, but you can't lean for extra years after it's proven to be wrong. So if he stays pat and doesn't make some changes, now I think we're moving into iffy. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
If he's not decisive in the offseason. And then this quarterback thing, I can get very wrapped up in plan A quarterback situations. You identify a guy, you get the commitment, you sign him, you develop him. That's how quarterbacking should work, except that's not how it works for anybody anymore. So at the moment, this feels chaotic, but to your point, if they have resources they can marshal and they wind up with somebody that they really like in this class, in the next before signing day in December, or they do an awesome job and land somebody in the portal that you're not even thinking about right now, that is like, wow, that is an established. If they get a Dylan Gabriel or a Cam Ward or a Will Howard in the portal, you got a name? Drop a name.
Quinn Ewers.
Stop it. Someone put that in the thing. What are we doing? Is that a thing? What is that? A person said this in the... William, is that where you got this? William in the YouTube chat says talking about portal QBs as Quinn Ewers a potential portal QB. This William starting this, the two Williams, or is this a thing that is out there?
He's not going to be Texas' starting quarterback next year. And
but
is he definitely going to be an NFL? I don't know. The NFL guys who throw 45 screens a game, I have no idea.
What kind of Dr. Pepper money is he getting? I cannot wait for the Deputy Ewers I'm moving to Michigan Dr. Pepper commercial. Oh my God. This is a thing? Are we doing this? Did you start this? For real, this is a thing?
I don't know how much of a thing it is. I think it is fair to include Quinn Ewers in your thought process when pondering what next year's portal QB class could look like.
To be fair, you did whisper it. And when someone whispers something on a show, then it doesn't really count. So,
that's right.
Okay, that's right. My head exploded. I was not aware of any of this stuff until the YouTube chat said it, and then Bill repeated it. So, okay. Woo! You think they'll get a portal guy, though? I think they will. I mean, and unless, like, I would love to see a little bit of Jaden Davis, but, like, I feel like they're not going to show us that this year. So, like, then...
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah.
How would we be able to know? He was a highly recruited guy. He certainly has a chance to be ready to start in year 2 at Michigan, but also I don't know that you can rely on that since we haven't seen him. So,
yeah, I'd like 1 year rental Jaden Davis QB2. Jaden Davis starts in 2026.
I'd buy that. All right, Jonathan Smith. So we're basically doing right in this group. It's the first year coaches. So we already did Curt Cignetti, Sharon Moore. Now Jonathan. So we're both okay on Sharon Moore. Jonathan Smith, Michigan State. What you got?
I'm good. Like I like where Michigan State is at. I guess you could argue that they should be a little better than 4-4 currently. Only 2 Big Ten wins against Maryland and Iowa. This is. I didn't have very high expectations for Michigan State, so it would have been difficult, I think, for Jonathan Smith to underperform in my eyes. So I would consider him about on track, and I think he's a pretty good head coach. Okay. I liked what he did with like going to take Joe Rossi from Minnesota to be his defensive coordinator. Like I thought that was a pretty shrewd decision on his part to bring in a guy that I believe he had no familiarity with, who knows the league and was a good coordinator in the Big Ten. I think they got to do a little more on offense. I think they got to do a little more to help Aiden Childs. I including perhaps considering making a change there at coordinator. So it's not like it's been all perfect. But I'm okay with a rebuilding Michigan State team having the potential to maybe go to a bowl game in Jonathan Smith's first year. So I'm good.
Yeah, you're not okay with that. I'm good with that.
Sorry, I'm good with it. Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I have been terrible on Michigan State all year because I was like, Aiden Childs, can I adopt him? I think he's fantastic. Then he had a couple bad games, and I was like, I think I'd bench him. And then they had a bye week, and they came back, and he looked like an NFL quarterback, and he beat Iowa. And I was like, I love Aiden Childs. Sorry again. And then they had it's not looking like that right now. So, because guess what? Because he's a first-year starting quarterback, and he's a teenager, and he's not perfect in year 1 as a starter, Doug. So, like, and also, by the way, Nick Marsh, if Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith didn't exist, like I think people nationally will be talking about Nick Marsh as a true freshman receiver at Michigan State. So there's a lot there. I don't know. Am I wrong here? Is this too unrealistic for me not to be at good with him? Are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you. Just what's keeping you? Because you love the hire, right? So what has transpired to keep you from being good with it currently?
I mean, probably a little bit of the inconsistency, except that the inconsistency should be expected. So I don't know.
Their losses are Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois.
Yeah. And they've also lost. So they've lost 6 of 7 after a 3-0 start. And the win is the Iowa game that I was like, holy moly, they're back. So, but also point taken. Like so that's right. That's 4 ranked teams on the road at Boston College, on the road at Michigan. They've lost 6 of 7. Those are the 6 losses.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a really nice week 2 win at Maryland, and it was a really nice home win against Iowa in this stretch, coming off the bye where it feels like they fixed things. So I guess I would have said, like, I just would have liked to seen a couple more peaks. That's 2 peaks.
Yeah.
So how many peaks do I want? What's wrong with me? So maybe I'm too harsh here. I did like the hire. So, all right. So maybe I'll rescind my okay and you can push me towards good. But it's good for now. Boston College. Oh, and Jonathan Smith, he's making, do we want to say everyone's salaries for every time? He's making $7.25 million. He's 8th in the North of the 24 who are ranked. $7.25 million. That's kind of a lot, actually.
John in the chat says that Smith is not a great recruiter, which I think is a good point to bring up. If part of your okay is like, what's this roster going to look like? I think that's fair.
Okay, then that's part of it.
Okay.
Boston College, Bill O'Brien, good. Oh,
Steve,
you're okay.
I'm okay. I think I feel about Bill O'Brien how you feel about Jonathan Smith.
No, because this is what I liked. So Boston College went down to SMU, and I was watching Bill O'Brien's post-game news conference. He got asked about third downs, and he said, like, third downs don't really matter because we were going to go for it on fourth down basically every time. We're not here to kick field goals. They've kicked the fewest field goals in college football. And he said, like, we're here to score touchdowns. So they were 6 of 15 on third down against SMU, but they were 3 of 6 on fourth down. So, like, he's not even thinking about third down conversions as a stat. Because, like, do we talk about second down conversions as a stat? That's not a stat you can even find. How often are you making a first down on second down? Nobody cares because you get one more shot. That's where Bill O'Brien is. And so they have an imperfect quarterback because Grayson James is limited, but they made the quarterback change. But, like, pedal down, do this. I am totally on board with it. And they've been they're 4-1 at home. They've beaten Syracuse and Michigan State at home. And they have 4 losses on the road. At Missouri, they went and played an SEC team on the road. At Virginia Tech, and then they went down to Texas and, like, gave SMU a game. And they have a chance. They get UNC and Pitt at home to end of the year to make a bowl. And I just like the cut of his jib. I like how they're going about it. I think he made a probably difficult but necessary decision with Thomas Castellanos. He's just going to coach quarterbacks the way he's going to coach them. And so I don't think he would recruit a quarterback like Thomas Castellanos with that skill set. They tried, and we wish they would have run Thomas Castellanos more, but, like, that's not his offense. So that they've been able to kind of patch it together and win a couple good games. And even their home loss was to Louisville in a kind of competitive game. I think they've been, like, really competitive in kind of a janky year that I think could have gone off the rails. And instead, they're probably going to make a bowl. So I'm good. And I think it's a good long-term hire too.
Making a bowl is not a step forward for BC. It's what BC's been, right? Like, perennially 6-6, finish 7-6 kind of.
It's an important point because, again, like Wisconsin, like Jeff Hafley wasn't fired, like Paul Chryst was fired, but, like, these weren't programs that were destitute. And Luke Fickell and Bill O'Brien had to come rebuild them. They made a bowl last year. I mean, we didn't make the point last week. It's my bad. We should have. SMU Boston College on list past Saturday was a rematch of the Fenway Bowl last year that Boston College won. So everybody was like, oh, SMU's out for revenge on Boston College. So, like, I agree with that. But also, you're making a transition to a certain style of playing, and you don't have the quarterback to do that. So even though it's not a rebuild, I still think it can be a little off kilter when you're willing to undergo a transformation. And if you're going to hire Bill O'Brien and think he's maybe going to be there for 15 years and then retire, you have to transform into his program. So I think even though it's not a rebuild, like a step back year in year one, I think would have been understandable as a transition. And instead, they're probably going to make a bowl.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, like, I need Bill O'Brien to win 9 games for me to be in a good category here. And an okay for me, I think represents a little more optimism than when this hire was first made, because I questioned how much of Bill O'Brien's decision to go to BC was just, like, convenience. And it's okay to make decisions that are okay for your family, but, like, how much passion to rebuild BC or make BC something more was actually behind it. And then I think pretty early on, he showed that there was some there. I'm going to question any program like this with an, like, older head coach who feels a little set in his ways, like how aggressive they're going to be in building their roster. So that
like
pulls me back. Yeah. Well, Curt Cignetti, I think, is the exception, maybe. Clearly. But also he had a winning roster to bring with him. So that pulls me back from good a little bit. And I actually the Castellanos stuff, like you're right, Bill O'Brien would never recruit, I think, a quarterback like Thomas Castellanos. I sense a little stubbornness, like in the reticence to like embrace what Castellanos was and what this roster was that he inherited. It has felt like at times maybe he was trying to squeeze something out of this offense that wasn't there. That just makes me a little nervous about how he might try to do things in the future. So like, I'm not out on it by any stretch, but I'm not like full bore. Here comes Bill O'Brien and the BC Eagles either. I'm just I'm in the middle waiting to see. So I'm okay.
But I also think like he has the certainty of Boston College just got a head coach who used to be the head coach at Penn State and in the NFL, where he made the playoffs a bunch of times and used to be Tom Brady's quarterbacks coach. Like that's a pretty good hire for Boston College, and he wants to be there, and he knows he has time. And so he knows that like, listen, we're going to do it my way. I don't have to desperately patch it together in year one. So I think they've like made a pretty firm transition into the Bill O'Brien era without giving that up, but still without being a 2-win team right now, which I think they could be, honestly. Right? If he just would have been like, this is going to be hard before it gets good, but it's still been competitive and fun with an upside. So that's why I'm good. Okay. Man, I'm enjoying these conversations. They're too long. Fran Brown. What do you got? Syracuse. He's famous.
I'm good. He's clean. Winners get washed. 7-3, man. So we can do a 7-3. It actually is like they're 7-3, which is like kind of the expectation. Their win total was 7.5, right? So
yeah.
I think there are a lot of good vibes here. Like two very good wins, I think, beating Georgia Tech and beating UNLV. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think they're kicking themselves by losing to Stanford.
Yep.
I think they're probably kicking themselves losing to BC.
Yep.
But otherwise, this has been a good season for them, and they have 2 games left. I think they're going to get an 8th win with UConn, and they have a chance to shake up things by beating Miami at the end of the year. Which I think if Syracuse plays its best game, it can give Miami all it cares to handle. So they're staring down at least an 8, and if things get funky, potentially a 9-win season. And Fran Brown's first year. I think the other thing too is like there were stories about this when the calendar flipped to November for Syracuse about how bad Syracuse has been in the month of November the last 2 years, or 3-5. They were 0-4 2 years ago, or 1-3, excuse me, in November 2 years ago.
Yeah,
they're 2-1 right now, right? And they haven't had the Dino Babers, we're going to win our first 4 games and then lose our next 6 games kind of thing. They've been a little up and down, but like in a weird way consistent with that I think should be encouraging, right? So, and I think Fran Brown's going to recruit his butt off too. So I'm good. I think they're in a great spot.
And still like have to give credit to like Fran Brown went and got Kyle McCord. There's lots of places that would have taken Kyle McCord. He got Ohio State's quarterback to come be the quarterback. And you know what I think Syracuse fans are having this year? Fun. I think it's fun to be a Syracuse fan right now. They're chucking it all over the place and they're winning. And I mean, like not every part of that is going to be replicable, but this is like a fantastic year one. And then you got to see like what comes next. But guess what comes next is probably Fran Brown getting after on the recruiting trail. So there's no hesitation about this being a good from both of us. All right. Other first year guys, Jed Fish at Washington. I kind of don't know what to do with this because, again, they're 6-0 at home and they're 0-5 when they're not at home. They do have close losses to Washington State. They kind of blew the Washington State game. Bad call at the end of the game. And they kind of blew it with Rutgers when they were not that close against. I got blown out by Iowa, blown out by at Penn State. Slightly more competitive in Indiana, but still lost by 2 scores. I actually am willing, and this is like applies a little bit to Boston College too, who's 4-1 at home. I think winning games in front of your home fans and then going out on the road and it's hard to travel and whatever, like that's not a bad way to beat a mediocre team. Like if you're just a Washington season ticket holder and you closed your eyes when they're on the road, you're like, man, these guys, are they going to the national title game again? This is super fun. So it's not consistent, but I think it's been a decent job patching it together with a roster that got blown apart. And so now my question is, why did I only make him an okay when you gave him a good?
Yeah, I gave him a good. I think that's part of it. I think if they had a kicker, they'd have maybe 2 more wins. Right. So I think he's done a nice job avoiding a real collapse that honestly would have been understandable. Right. And I know we're talking about coaches, but you can't help but factor in like Damon Williams looks like he might be pretty good, right? So,
Yes, he does.
So it's like,
I mean,
the
that's like they
future
brought in
yeah.
they brought in a portal quarterback who was through 2 picks against UCLA on Friday night, and they brought in their young backup, and he won the game for him.
Yeah, and we'll see. So are they also off this week? I know Oregon's off before they play. Is Washington off this week? Or does Washington play this week?
They're off this week because they're 6-5. Yeah, they're 6-0
Right.
at home, 6-0 at home, and 0-5 not at home.
So I don't know if they're going to start Damon Williams at Oregon in the last regular season game, but that'd be pretty exciting if they do. But that factored into my good too. I think Jed Fish is a good coach, right? That's why I was fearful that he was only going to be at Washington for 1 year because I think he's a good coach. So you can question some of it, right? Like, because I think your ability to perform like in situational football and special teams and not penalties, like, is in some way a reflection of your head coach. But that roster was also in such flux that like some of it is almost understandable. So I think they're fine. I think they're having a good year, and will have a good future with Jed Fish. So
yeah,
I'm good.
Okay, so now I feel bad. They made him okay. All right, so we have a lot more to get to. I would rather have too much to talk about in the North than not enough. But since we started this show, we have never been in danger of having not enough to talk about because the North has risen up, which means when we come back, it's time to tell us South Cram-o-meter. We'll do that next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Producer Mike just put information in the chat, and an offensive coordinator has been handed to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That
was a name. That was a name I saw people kick around. Tom Herman fired by FAU. You know what's Temple played FAU this week. Temple won 18-15. Then Temple fired Stan Drayton, and FAU fired Tom Herman. Have two coaches have coached against each other ever been fired 2 days later?
Both who coached together at Ohio State.
Former Ohio State assistants. Yeah. So no, maybe Luke Fickell just got an OC and a running backs coach.
Like I am like 90% certain that Tom Herman's the next offensive coordinator at Wisconsin. Like, I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
Luke Fickell was a co-defensive coordinator on the Ohio State staff when they won the national championship in 2014. Tom Herman was the offensive coordinator. Tom Herman did such a good job that he got the Houston head coaching job after that year, then the Texas head coaching job, then he got fired from Texas, and then he was the FAU head coach, and it has not gone well. He's a really good offensive coordinator, I think. And they already have Kenny Guyton, who was a backup quarterback for Ohio State in those years, is a receivers coach at Wisconsin right now. Like, Luke Fickell is not afraid to dip into the Ohio State well. I think Tom Herman could be coordinating Wisconsin's offense before the end of the year. I am not joking.
I'll be good with it.
All right, you want to do another 20 minutes on Wisconsin or what?
Sure, let's do it.
Cram-o-meter, 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 cram-o-meter. So here's the thing. I am working something out, and I've been vocal on social media. I'm working something out, and I said we're going to destroy some SEC myths on KOTN this week, and we are. Yeah. And I'm working something out, and I ran it by Landis off the air a little bit. I'm going to bring you what I've got on Tuesday because I really kind of am trying to wrap up a thought process here to punch holes in the too prevalent national media narrative that again is just so counterfactual that we have officially reached the point, Landis, where people cannot tell when somebody is trolling about the SEC and when somebody's being honest about the SEC. Our friend Stephen Godfrey, who is a man of all worlds. He lives in Tennessee, but he is not of the South, or he's kind of not. He is kind of the South, but he's not for the South. So after LSU lost, he put out a tweet about, like, I think you've really got to think about 4-loss LSU in the playoff conversation, and people were getting mad at him, but he was definitely trolling and being sarcastic, except you definitely could hear other people actually making a claim like that. So I am incredibly frustrated with national and Southern media right now and the way they are handling all this stuff. And we'll get into that. So I'm not going to be quite as crammy today, because the one thing that I'll get to on Tuesday is that Kirby Smart is actually right with a lot of the, yes, snap your head back, brother, is right with a lot of the things that he's saying, but it only applies to Georgia. And then a lot of other people are taking, this is what happened in the past in the SEC, is things happened with Alabama, and then everybody applied the Alabama standard and the Alabama way of thinking to everybody else in the SEC that didn't deserve that. And the exact same thing is happening with Georgia right now. But Georgia is not the villain here. The villain is the discussion that is based off a Georgia reality that becomes a myth when applied to Texas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Alabama. 500,000. What's your number?
My number is I forget, he's gonna be calm and 500,000. 5,500, because I just tacked 2 zeros on the end of 55, which we all know is a very cold temperature. If you're outside and exposed to that for like 3.5 hours, like you're going to get frostbite. So you gotta be careful. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good, because it was 55 degrees and the Tennessee players were sitting on a heated bench. I definitely saw people on social media who were like, guys like to stay loose. And it was like, oh my God. So again, this is the South Cram-o-meter, Mike. We can show the numbers. We started off saying 1 to 1,000 each week. How hard can the South cram it? And then we broke it pretty quickly. I forgot to do it in week 1. In week 2, it was 815. In week 3, it was 975. These numbers are a balance of what we say. Week 4, it was 910. Week 5, we broke it for the first time, 1,200. Week 6, 1,669. Week 7, 6.5 million. Really smashed it that week. Week 8, 459,000. Week 9, 652. We backed it off. Week 10, 45,233. Week 11, back over 1 million. And now we're going to be like, whatever. 250,000 or so is going to be our balance. So we're going to do some more cramming on Tuesday, Bill, but it is fun to make fun of the South for thinking that 55 degrees is cold. That is something that we will never tire of.
No, that's a joke. This is just tremendous reporting out of friend of the program, Shahan Jeharaja. It has nothing to do with our current conversation, but I just think it's funny. There are 4 FBS programs who have an owl as a mascot: Rice, Temple, Kennesaw State, and FAU. They've all fired their coaches this year.
No. That is a tough year for owls. An owl is a majestic bird.
It is.
Wow. I saw somebody in a Rice sweatshirt at Costco yesterday. Wow. I own a Rice sweatshirt. Wow. Owls. My kid's elementary school mascot was the owl. Oh.
We tell that football coach to watch out.
Go pet an owl. That is tremendous reporting. That is, I think Shahan might win a Pulitzer for that. Our guy. Wow. Are they all former Ohio State assistants too?
No.
Because an owl is so wise, but the owl is also not patient.
Oh, that's true. He only took 3 licks to get to the Tootsie Pop. That's impatient.
4-hour show. If I responded to what you just said, it'd be a 4-hour show. All right, that's the Cram-o-meter. I'm really going to try to break this down and bust some myths on Tuesday, but I needed a little more time to get myself together about this. Top 11 and a half rankings. I had to check myself on this too. Let's go to yours first though. We do this every week. It's like our top 11 and like the 11 and a half teams, like we're kind of keeping an eye on. We check in, like to check in. So what's your top 11 and a half this week?
Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State. That's my top 6. And then we get to the SEC. What's 4?
Quagmire.
Oh, Quagmire. Sorry. Oh, that's good. Actually, begins with QUA. I like it. Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, in that order. I don't know what to do because they all like beat each other. So that's where I ended up. BYU 11, and then the 11 and a half spot. I have SMU, which I actually think is getting a little bit of a short shrift by people who are ranking teams. I think SMU should be higher, but they also lost to BYU, and you try to honor that. So they're in my 11 and a half spot.
But in the actual AP poll, SMU is ahead of BYU.
Yeah, but they're not in the playoff rankings though. Maybe they will.
Well, we'll see this week. Yeah.
Maybe they will
After that big win over a scrappy Boston College team.
Right.
Well, but BYU, we haven't had the rankings since BYU lost. So like we don't know what that's going to be. So I'll be very curious how they do that. All right, my top 11 and a half. And there's one thing I really want to focus on here. I gave a nod, and this is very, very difficult. Texas's schedule is not great. Texas kind of is Indiana that lost to Georgia. So like it is like the Texas thing is very odd. And a lot of people have talked about this, that like if they lose to Texas A&M, like Texas is not guaranteed stuff because like where's their good win? And they don't have a goofy loss, but like so, but also Notre Dame. I wound up keeping Notre Dame. As impressed as I was by Notre Dame, I did keep Notre Dame behind this glut of SEC teams. And I wasn't sure what to do with that. Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Indiana 3, Penn State 4, Texas 5, Ole Miss 6, Alabama 7, Georgia 8, Notre Dame 9, BYU 10, SMU 11, and I'm keeping my eye on Colorado at 11.5. Can we, the real conversation here that I want to have quickly is that Boise State is ahead of BYU in the AP poll. And they're now that BYU has lost, there continues to be a lot of conversation about Boise State getting the 4th auto bid. That again, so people know this, the top 4 ranked conference champs get the 4 buys. It does not have to be the power conference teams. So the Big 12 champ is guaranteed a spot in the playoff. For example, that Big 12 champ, just like the Big 10 champ or the SEC champ or anybody else, is not guaranteed a bye. So if Boise State wins the Mountain West and finishes higher ranked than the Big 12 champ, Boise State's going to be the 4 seed. Why is Boise State ahead of BYU right now, though? Because who is Boise State's best win? I know they played Oregon close. I get it.
UNLV. Okay.
So, but is that better than BYU beating SMU and BYU beating Kansas State? Maybe Kansas State will fall out this week, but like, I don't feel the impetus. I'm very confused as to why people are so excited to rank Boise State ahead of BYU.
It's confusing for me too, for reasons you just said, but also like, I'm not entirely convinced that Boise State's the best G5 team. Tulane's pretty good. Army's pretty good. Like I don't.
Yeah.
You want to tell me both those teams are better than Boise? I'll listen to an argument, right? So and it'd be one thing if like Boise had a couple of impressive wins outside of the Mountain West on its resume. It doesn't. And like I give it credit for playing Oregon tough, absolutely. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little odd to me. I don't know if that's just like, I don't know. Are people like hesitant to vote for Ashton Genty in the Heisman? So like to make up for it, they're going to rank Boise higher than they should be. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like they're swept up. I feel like people are swept up because again, like the Big 12 is substantially more difficult than the Mountain West. Like that, but like that's where we are. So there's 2 1-loss teams, and you think the Mountain West champ has earned it more than the highest ranked Big 12 team right now? I'm very confused. I don't know why, because like typically we're begging voters and the committee like to give respect to like, smaller conference teams. And now I think like they're overdoing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why they are is like the thing. It's like, I would love to sit down and like really hear the argument from anybody of why you think Boise State right now should be ranked ahead of BYU. So again, the other thing that matters is like the Big 12 title game is going to be, 2 better teams than the Mountain West title game. Like the Mountain West title game is not going to have another ranked team probably that Boise State's going to beat, but it's going to be 2 ranked teams in the Big 12, right? So like then that win might propel, but there's just some people who are like very into this idea, and I find it odd. I find it odd. Let's get to more coaches. These are coaches in the playoff race. So again, we're doing all 28. We just grouped them a little bit. Kalani Sitake, your friend and mine, they just lost their first game. It's hard to go undefeated. And I feel like some people were waiting for BYU to lose just to say, I told you so. And it's like, is that where we are?
Yeah.
We're at the like, haha, you lost stage of the college football season. It's hard to win all your games. And by the way, Kansas has a bad record and is playing awesome right now. So what do you think about Kalani Sitake?
I think he's done a great job this year. He's a national coach of the year candidate. He's not the strongest one, right? But he's in the conversation. I think they were picked to finish 13th in a 16-team league, and they're currently first in the Big 12. Their preseason win total was 4.5. They have 9 wins, so they have outperformed expectations probably more than anyone other than Indiana this year. I think is maybe fair to say about BYU, at least among the power conference teams. So I think you can feel good about like last year being a little bit of a blip on what is otherwise a pretty good resume for Kalani Sitake at BYU, and I feel good about where they're going in the future. So I'm good, very very much good.
Yeah, very very much a good. Like everything, Jay Hill, a big part of it as a defensive coordinator. I'll be curious, like if he gets interest. He's been a head coach before. Like if he gets some interest from people about stuff. That guy's just going to be, he's the next Lavelle Edwards, right? I mean, he's just going to be an all-timer, lifelong coach at BYU and just be a guy that wins and is great for the program. So the strongest of goods. Deion Sanders, fascinating case because Deion Sanders really has caused the media to lose its mind in opposite ways in 2 separate years. And then a year ago, they got off to a hot start, and people were trying to put him in the national championship game, and that was wrong, and they weren't ready for that. And then they kind of, the last 2/3 of the season, they weren't close to being that team. And then it was an off-season discussion about roster building and like what's he putting into the job, and is even trying to recruit high schools. And he kind of admits like that's not the plan. They're really working the portal, and now, like if after an off season and a preseason and an early season of criticism, they're one of the hottest teams in college football right now. And it's not only a media conversation about him, but it's hard to not have that be part of the discussion because he is such a person of the media. He also is a tremendous sportsman as a player and as a coach. And like he earned his media limelight. But I'm a little, like I always say, like I support journalism. Journalists can be goofballs sometimes. I feel like that we have not covered ourselves in glory as a full media entity the last 2 years in trying to figure out how to talk about Deion Sanders and this college football team, because this is a coaching discussion, right? Colorado's a good football team, but we're talking about Deion. And I feel like he's kind of had us all on tilt for 2 years. And I think maybe we need to like re-examine how we think about things. Cause I think like people started criticizing him this offseason, I think, because they thought he was full of himself because he was saying we're going to be good. And people kind of got mad about it. I don't really know, like, what else were they mad at him about? And then all of a sudden, like, he kind of reacted to like, hey, what's with all this criticism? And then he called out journalists, and then people got mad about that. But like, I actually don't know what were they mad about to begin with in a sport where Kirby Smart shoves a player and Kirby Smart has players off the field who are being a danger to the community, and like Deion Sanders talked too much, and people got mad. I don't know, man. It's weird. He's pretty good at this, turns out.
He is pretty good at it. I have a lot of thoughts on what the reaction to Deion Sanders is. I think it's people were mad that people were getting excited about it. Like we're excited about Deion having a bigger platform in college football. Like I get that he's not for everybody. And he does talk a lot. It's all right. Yeah. Curt Cignetti talks a lot too. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like back it up, and he's backed it up. So what's there to be upset about?
Yeah. Okay. So we're good. I don't know. And I don't know what the long-term thing is, but like the idea that you're going to try to build your team through the portal instead of high school recruiting, like he's not the only guy who's doing that. And basically right now, if you looked in the mirror, if we try to do like mirror images, a college football head coach that another coach is most like, the two guys who are most like each other in a lot of ways right now are Deion Sanders and Curt Cignetti. You just said it. Build through the portal, talk it, and walk it. And have a history behind you. Like, what else? And have people doubt you and then prove them wrong. Curt Cignetti and Deion Sanders are the same person. So it's right. Are they not?
They're very similar. Yeah. The difference is that Deion's history is as a player and Curt's is as a successful head coach at lower levels. Like Deion doesn't have that. And it was good. He was fine at Jackson State, but he wasn't there long enough to say one way or the other, right? So, but no, I think in the way that they carry themselves and want to run their program and project confidence, I think is very similar. Yes.
If we played Who Said This Quote and the quote was Google me.
Yeah, right.
Wouldn't you say Deion?
We're the emerging superpower. Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
Curt Cignetti talks like Deion Sanders. Anyway, so we're both good, like highest of good. I don't know how long it's going to last, but like, why would you doubt it? And it's working right now, and they might make the playoff. Good. Dan Lanning, what do you think of that guy? He's famous.
I want to get an Indiana-Colorado playoff game. Make that happen?
Oh, my God. Probably in the semis, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You get what do you think? Like Ohio State, Oregon in one semi, and Colorado, Indiana in the other. Does that work for us?
Sign me up. I don't know that the Dan Lanning conversation needs to be particularly long. We just did a full show about Oregon last week,
and then they almost lost.
And then they almost lost, but he's good. He's good. He's 33-5. They're 11-0. The number one team in the country. He's good.
Good at sports. Dan Lanning, also good. All right, yeah. Refer to our hour-long show last week when we had Yogi Roth on Wednesday. Marcus Freeman, like. I would almost say like really good, like remarkable from the high of the Texas A&M win to the absolute, it's the worst loss in college football this year, right? Because Northern Illinois is not good as it turned out. It's not like they lost to the best team in the MAC. At home, the worst loss in college football. Injuries all over the place. And the way they are playing right now, the belief they have, the connectivity. I asked Marcus Freeman after the game about like sort of this complimentary football that like I have a tendency to be like complimentary footballs for losers. And then you watch it and it's like, actually it works. It's just, I don't like it when Kirk Ferentz says it, but like they have dudes, they have buy-in. That crowd believes in this program. He is young. He is learning. He is self-deprecating. He is not afraid to admit when he's wrong. And I think there is like so much good happening in the Notre Dame program right now in the same season in which they lost to Northern Illinois at home.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Is this a safe space for me to admit something? Right? No
Admit
one.
it.
That's just me and you talking. I was very out on Marcus Freeman after that Northern Illinois because it was not the first time that Notre Dame has lost a game like that under Marcus Freeman. Yep. And I put a $20 bet on Notre Dame to win the national title 2 days ago. So that's how far I've swung on Marcus Freeman over the last 2 months.
Wow. They are not a perfect team, but they are maximizing everything they have right now. And just like I was really trying to, I was at the game on Saturday. I was really trying to watch the offensive line the whole game. Like Anthony Knapp at left tackle, like they've been playing they are not afraid to play young guys on the offensive line. And like they get them ready and they just do a lot of good stuff, and like they have a mix of young guys. Like they have Jack Kaiser out there who's making a 63rd career start. He came in after the game, was talking about playing more, not career start, career game, playing more games than anybody in history. And then they're playing some freshman linebackers who are making plays and being in the right spot. And they lost Ben Morrison, is one of the best corners in the country for the year. And their secondary is making plays. And there is just like the ultimate, like it's not like this is like, right. When they hired him, you got to keep him in the building. You got him in the building as Brian Kelly's defensive coordinator. You got to keep him in the building. You've got to make this hire, even if he's not quite ready for it. And I think maybe in some ways he wasn't quite ready for it. And this is a little bit like Syracuse. You have a chance to go get a guy like Fran Brown. You got to do it, even if he's not quite ready for it. And then you learn with them on the job, and you will reap the benefits. I think Fran Brown had a game. I think the Stanford game is on Fran Brown. They lost that game because he was a new head coach. I think some of these losses for Marcus Freeman early in his career, losing to inferior teams after big games, I think you point directly to coaching, learning. But where they are right now and what this guy could be at that program long term, absolutely worth it. And like it's happened. Like, I think that might be over. I think we might be like, hey, remember when Marcus Freeman early in his career was like losing to G5 teams every time they played somebody good the week before? I think we might be there, like, and famous last words, but like just being there where Notre Dame is right now, and they're not Georgia. We get that, right? But they are maximizing who they are, and there's still a ceiling there. And get me CJ Carr next year on the field for Notre Dame, and let's see what's up as a young quarterback. So, okay.
To be clear, I'm not predicting Notre Dame will win the national title, but plus 2,200 felt like very good value for a team that is almost certainly going to make the playoff, has an excellent defense that can run the ball really well. So that's why I played the bet, right?
Also, you're just fancy stats, man. Like you see an edge. You see an edge, and you've got to take it.
I have 2 futures bets on college football. One is Notre Dame to win a national title, and I bet Bowling Green to win the MAC after I watched them give a game to Penn State in Happy Valley in September.
Oh, yeah. How you feeling about that?
Feel pretty good about that too.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. All right. Ryan Day, he's famous. He's Ohio State's coach. Bill, what do you think?
He is. There's a lens here that I think could get you to say okay. I'm a good. They're right where they want to be in terms of playing for the Big Ten title, playing for a national championship. They're not off track with that whatsoever. We have had the top 5 games conversation with Ryan Day. He has another one coming up this week. Whether or not people will give him credit for that is another conversation entirely. But I'm good with where they are right now, and maybe we'll have a different conversation about that after the year. But I think right now things are good.
And we're going to talk a ton about Ohio State and Indiana on Wednesday, so we don't need to talk a ton about Ohio State right now. I think he's potentially like even ascending within this season. That we've talked about this to a decent degree, like just some of the adjustments, and I think both schematically, especially defensively, but just in the way they're thinking about things since the Oregon loss feels like real progress to me. And listen, this is his 6th year. It's not like he's new to this, but I think, addressing this kind of, I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but like the on the margins, the search for the inches, how do you get a great team over the top? They need to show it, right? But I think the Penn State win showed that after, the game against Nebraska was pretty rough, and then they've handled business the last 2 weeks. Really looking forward to this game on Saturday. But I am also a good, without hesitation, on Ryan Day.
Yeah.
James Franklin and Penn State. I am also a good here, and it's like, unless you're Paul Feinbaum, I just don't know what you want. And part of this, again, is we've talked about it on multiple shows, liking the way Penn State has responded since losing to Ohio State. And even though James Franklin's been there for a decade, it feels like they are still learning some of that stuff, and the context of the sport changing has helped them. But I really like where they are since that loss, and I am expecting they will play even better than next time they play in a really big game against a really good team. Now, if they turtle and they're conservative and they don't look ready for the moment, then that will factor back in. But I really like where they are right now, so I'm a good.
Yeah, I'm a good as well. I agree with everything you've said. And I think James Franklin, without explicitly saying it, has sort of hinted that he believes that Penn State as a program has taken a tangible step forward like in the last 2-3 years and where it was prior in his tenure. I think that's probably accurate. They're working on their 3rd straight season of double-digit wins. The only teams he's lost to in the last 3 years are Ohio State, Michigan, and Ole Miss in the bowl game at the end of last year. So all the questions remain about, like, can James Franklin get Penn State past what it is currently, which is, by the way, like a top 10 program in college football, perennial winner, like all that stuff is, I don't think should be taken for granted. But I also understand wanting to maybe push for something a little more than that. And we'll see if James Franklin can get them there. But I'm still, even with that conversation lingering, I'm still good with where he is and where Penn State is.
I don't want to be obsessed with this, but he's the 3rd highest paid coach in the North behind Ryan Day and Curt Cignetti at $8.5 million a year. Like, does that matter when we're thinking about coaches, like what you're paid to be? Like, is that part of the James Franklin conversation? We're like, okay, you're one of the best 10 programs in the North, but you're also, in the country, but you're also getting paid like it. And hey, like, let's see a playoff win, or let's beat Ohio State sometime. You know what I mean? Does that matter or no?
I think it matters some. I don't think it should mean you suddenly start holding a coach to national championship standards because the ridiculous coaching market in the South makes you pay $9 million for him. Like, it's not like Curt Cignetti is not going to get fired 5 years into his deal if doesn't have a national championship trophy in the lobby at Indiana, right? So I think you need to be a little pragmatic about it. But yes, I think it is fair to look at Ryan Day makes this much, James Franklin makes this much. That gap is not particularly wide. Why can't you beat him once in a while, kind of thing?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're both good on James Franklin and feeling good about that. When we come back, we have 15 more coaches to get to. We'll go a little faster. We promise. We promise. Well, I can't promise because I break promises about going long all the time. We'll do our very best. Next on Kings of the North. Doug and Bill back. Just had a wave of this again. We can't talk about it for an extended period of time because we have to get going, but just had another wave of gratitude. Just really having fun with this show, having fun with you, Landis, having fun with our folks. So grateful. Let's talk about whether Ryan Walters should be fired. Anyway, do we want to start? I got a hashtag for you. Do you want to try to start a hashtag? I have a new coach for Purdue. And I want to see if we can make this happen. It's a guy with Midwestern roots. It's a guy who has been a playoff coach. It's a guy who at times has certainly been an established winner. And I think he has a chance to be available. So the idea that Purdue could get a playoff coach in West Lafayette with Midwest roots, how's that float your boat?
I'm intrigued. Who is the guy?
Brian Kelly to West Lafayette.
The guy who complained about his ability to recruit at Notre Dame and then went to LSU and can't recruit is going to go to Purdue.
Listen, when you get fired at LSU, you start seeing the world in a different way. So I'm just saying, Purdue's in a bad spot. Ryan Walters, after getting blown out by Penn State, I think there's a combination of a lot of things that led to where we are right now. Obviously, the strength of the schedule. And the combination of not executing and having mental errors and mental bust, that's not a great combination. So we get it. Like they're playing in the Big Ten. They played Notre Dame in the non-conference. They just don't look competitive. And yeah. I am not calling for anything, but it's really disappointing within, like, it just doesn't feel competent sometimes, Bill. So I'm certainly iffy here.
I just don't think you want to let it fester. Like, I'm not generally in favor of firing a coach in year two. And the schedule has been difficult. I was talking about this with somebody the other day. It's like they had to play Notre Dame, Illinois, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and they play Indiana to end the year. It's like, is Ryan Walters secretly very good and just had to coach a very difficult schedule this year? I don't think that's it, because to your point, they've been non-competitive. They were shut out in 2 of those games. They scored 10 points against Penn State and 7 against Notre Dame. I think they have to do it, if just like to restart things. I don't, because if you have another season where you win 3 or 4 games, then you're going to fire him anyway, right? So what was the point of keeping him around for 1 more year? So I would do it if I were them. It's not a particularly expensive endeavor. I'm very much iffy. I don't know how you could be anything other than iffy, but I just don't know that Notre Dame has the stomach / the means to fire a coach in a second year. We'll see.
Purdue.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry, not Notre Dame. Purdue.
Yeah. I mean, they're the same program, basically the same program.
You said Brian Kelly.
I know. $4 million a year. He's making. I did when I was at the Ohio State Purdue game. I was just talking to some people, and I think, like, I really liked what Purdue did. I was hopeful about what Purdue did in the transfer portal in the offseason. Like, their portal guys haven't helped them much, and so it is a reminder, right? There is some of, like, live by the portal, die by the portal. There's someone's got to die, right? They're dying. So it's like Deion Sanders and Curt Cignetti are thriving in the portal, but it is not a guarantee. So some of these guys they got from Georgia, it's like, I think they got some guys coming up. They got some guys sort of coming down a level. And I don't know that really many of them have hit in any substantive way. And so here you are. So I don't know that that's a reason to retain it, to say, listen, we tried in the portal. They seemed like good investments to us. And, like, we just whiffed on a bunch of guys. Let's try again. But also, once it starts affecting your recruiting and that kind of thing, it's a really tough spot. So also, like, maybe not joking, Todd Monken, as not Todd Monken, Jeff Monken, the Army coach to Purdue, Jeff Monken to Purdue would kind of float my boat. All right, Neal Brown of West Virginia. I wanted to start with these 2 guys at the top because we're both iffy on both these guys. This might have been the line in the sand, the loss to Baylor at home. Neal Brown, the fans are upset and they should be. We're going to have a losing record at home. Some of that has to do with who we're playing. So we know that they played Penn State at home. They played Iowa State. Kansas State. They had a tough home, like a fun home schedule, but a tough home schedule. He got a 1-year extension in March that lowered his base pay a little bit, but added a year. So in 2025, so basically he's on the hook for 3 more years at $12.7 million. His contract says if he gets fired, they owe him 75%. So it's like $9.6 million that they'd owe him. I just think they're kind of at a low ebb of enthusiasm here. And the thing that I was thinking about is I could, like, if they, like Neal Brown was an offensive guy, or like Dana Holgerson was an offensive guy, or Rich Rodriguez was an offensive guy. What if you just like made a change and said, like, we're going defense first. We're gonna go get like Jay Hill, the BYU defensive coordinator, or we're gonna get
Nick Saban.
Like someone who's like a famous guy. Like, so I mean, like, again, like I want Nick Saban, and Stephen Godfrey was like, you're gonna get Jimbo Fisher. So, but like, right, like, what if you really like you could find a really good defensive coordinator? What if the guy who there's no connection here, but like Robert Livingston has been a great hire by Deion Sanders out of the NFL as the defensive coordinator at Colorado. Go get Robert Livingston. Tell him to take over West Virginia and see what's up. So like, I think the last 2 games will determine this. Like if they miss a bowl, I think that might be it. But I just think it also might be time for a change.
Would you go, he might not even leave for the job. Would you go a little Glenn Schumann maybe?
The Georgia defensive coordinator. West Virginia, I think West Virginia is a pretty good job. Neal Brown, I mean, so he's low. The only coach in the North that we know the salary who makes less than Neal Brown is Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati. So I don't know if you could get Schumann for that. But like that's, I think like let's go find like a good defensive mind and then figure out the rest. So that's what I might be thinking about. So you think he's done?
I think he's done. Yeah.
Okay. 5-5. They finished with UCF and Texas Tech. If they don't make a bowl, if they don't win, I think he's done for sure. He's probably done. Yeah.
But Godfrey said they don't want to get rid of him, right? They would prefer to keep him. Yeah.
But so like a lot of like Penn State, you can understand. Pitt, backyard brawl on the road, amazing Pitt comeback. Iowa State was good when they lost to him. Kansas State was good. But like the Baylor loss is the first loss that's like, what? Come on, right? Even though Baylor's been playing better lately. So like the schedule strength argument loses a little luster when you lose to Baylor at home, right? So he was kind of trying to stand on that leg for a while. I'm not sure it's still going to work. All right. Pat Narduzzi at Pitt. So we're both iffy for sure on Neal Brown. Pat Narduzzi at Pitt.
Yeah, I figured we'd be a little different here. I'm okay, and maybe I should be good. Yeah, I'm not okay. I'm okay with a lean toward good. I think I would say they're 7-3. They just lost 3 straight. So like it's a little hard for me to have tremendous vibes at where Pitt is losing 3 straight. Now, granted, one was to SMU, one was to Clemson. Eli Holstein has been banged up. Like there are reasons for why Pitt has lost 3 straight. Also, it was like overperforming to a pretty considerable level, starting 7-0 too. So like give them credit for that. So I'm like mostly good. I'm okay because I want to like kind of see how the season finishes out. Like if they don't win another game kind of thing, then I don't know that the vibes would be tremendous for Pitt. So I don't know. You're good. You like Nard Dog.
I like Nardog. I really want to pull Pitt fans back from the edge. Just you see stuff on social media and people are frustrated, but like to be angry about Pitt being 7-3, I think is just not where we should be. Especially you go to the only undefeated team in the ACC on the road, you get blitzed. Stuff happens. You get hosed. You get hosed by the refs in the Virginia loss. I really think the refs cost them that game. And there's there's a little hosing. There was some hosing still against Clemson. And this is Clemson with it's Dabo Swinney and Cade Klubnik, who was the #1 quarterback in the country. And you're with a backup quarterback and a depleted offensive line. You play them into the final minutes while the refs are hosing you. So it's like, yes, 3-game winning streak, but it's like, three very different losses and all understandable in their own way. They've had two amazing comeback wins. They play hard. I like the move to Cade Bell. Again, their offensive line issues are real right now. They had a spectacular Thursday night win at home against Syracuse where the defense looked like world beaters. I just think that this is an old dog who learned some new tricks, and they were like a 5.5 win total, and they started 7-0. So I think like this is a spectacular success at Pitt this year, and like would be like a really good 8-4 season with something to build on. And I do think like we've talked about Eli Holstein a ton, playmaker, turnover tendencies. But as long as they keep him and they step up with NIL and they changed ADs so that they can step up in NIL, like I think they have a future there too. So like I really like where they are. I have no doubt about my good here.
Okay, I think that's all fair, and I'm not. There's nothing that's going to happen to push me like anywhere near the iffy category. I just they took a step back last year. I think this has been a step forward, but it's been a step forward that has had some bumps in the road along the way that just like keep me from fully embracing the future. But if I had to pick a side, like, do you think they're going to get better or fall back to like middle of the pack mediocrity? I would say get better. So it's an optimistic okay.
All right. Next up is Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati. They were 5-2 and lost 3 straight to Colorado, West Virginia, and Iowa State. I'm okay. You are iffy. Like this definitely started iffy. The whole fan base. This is only Scott Satterfield's second year, and again, the whole fan base was iffy to start the season. And then they played some pretty good football and won some nice games. And again, Dante Corleone on the defensive line, Corey Kiner running the ball, good offensive line. Brendan Sorsby's played well. I like their young backup quarterback. Joe Royer at tight end has really developed like some really nice pieces, I think. So I am pretty solidly okay. I don't know what the argument would. I don't know that anybody in the country would argue good. Why are you iffy?
I didn't like the hire to begin with. I'm with the Cincinnati fans who were there. I don't know that Scott Satterfield's a great coach. He was good at App State. He was middling at Louisville, and Louisville got immediately better after he left. And I don't know what his prospects are at Cincinnati. I think they're better this year than people thought they would be.
They are.
Right? But they have lost 3 in a row, and if they win this end the season on a 5-game losing streak, I don't think I'd be terribly surprised by that. That would mean they lose to TCU, which I guess would be surprising. But I don't know. Like they eked one out against Pitt, which is good. They beat Towson in Miami, Ohio. They beat a very bad Houston team. They beat what turned out to be a pretty bad UCF team, and they have a nice win against an emerging Arizona State team. So,
who played his backup quarterback in that game?
Right? So I don't like what's a win they have that they're not supposed to have.
I mean, like I probably Pitt. Well, no, they didn't lose. They didn't beat Pitt.
They lost to Pitt. Yeah.
Their best win is their loss to Pitt. No, I get it. So like I like their back. When I went to camp, I really liked their backup quarterback, Samaj Jones. I think that's a chance to be a player. Brendan Sorsby kind of lost his mind in the West Virginia game. Like they outplayed West Virginia the whole game, and their good quarterback made like 3 goofy plays and killed them in that game. So like, I don't think that was like Scott Satterfield's fault. And then their other 2 losses are on the road to Colorado and Iowa State, who are both still in the Big 12 race right now. So like the schedule and the Texas Tech loss, they kicked a field goal in the last play of the game to try to tie it. Like, so they're like, even right. I like their losses. Their best wins are their losses. So like, I think it's been a fun, competitive year. It's not been like, oh, we can't compete. We show up and we get destroyed. Like that has not at all been this year. Their least competitive game was this last one against Iowa State, where like Iowa State, after 2 straight losses and then came home and stood up and said, like, we're going to put an end to this. So that's a really nice win for Iowa State. But I think you could have stared at this schedule and the way things have played out and found a 2 or 3 win team. And instead, they're 5-5, and 4 of their 5 losses have been like super competitive. So I definitely I'm totally in on like, let's see what year 3 looks like. And I get that people didn't like the hire, but at some point, like, okay, I don't think they're incompetently coached right now. So I get like, you didn't love the hire. Godfrey didn't love the hire. A lot of fans didn't love the hire, but I don't know that you're staring at results this year and being like, oh, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, I mean their win total was 5.5. They're on 5 currently, so they're about
Yeah.
meeting expectations. I would say. Maybe I'm just trying to confirm my priors on not liking
That's okay.
the hire to begin with, but it has not been a bad season. To your point,
Yeah. You're allowed to confirm priors on this show. That's allowed. Lance Leipold, he's famous. He's the Kansas coach.
he is the Kansas coach. I'm good. I'm about as good as you can be for a team that's 4-6. Because I respect him.
Best 4-6 team in America, brother.
I respect him doing what you said at the start of the show, which was like, we're not changing who we are. We gotta tweak a thing here or there. We gotta get Jalen Daniels playing better. And now you're seeing the results of that. Not that the offense was tremendous against BYU, but they still found a way to win that game. They are the most dangerous 4-6 team in college football. Nobody wants to play Kansas right now. He's 21-27 in 4 seasons at Kansas. Kansas has a chance to finish with at least 6 wins for the 3rd season in a row, something that's happened 2 other times since 1960. Like, we have to remember that it's Kansas.
We do.
When we're talking about this. And like, I get they had high expectations this year and they're going to fall short of them, but we are seeing at the close of the season why those expectations were high. And it's a bit of a shame that they weren't able to play better football in the first half of the season, but he's a good coach. And I think this is a pretty good team. And I have all the belief in the world in what Lance Leipold is going to be able to do at Kansas moving forward. So I'm good.
I am totally good. I totally agree. And I kind of wish we had put these guys back to back. Mike, let's jump ahead. Let's go to Greg Schiano next, because I actually think there's a comparison here. And this is I think you could argue that like in the modern era, Rutgers and Kansas are the 2 worst power conference programs in the country in college football. And they have
Vanderbilt.
2. Do we want to do a 6-hour show? Like let's debate whether but right, like in the range, right? 2 of the bottom 5. And they have 2 really successful winning coaches running the programs right now. And both these seasons could have gone off the rails, and neither Lance Leipold nor Greg Schiano allowed it to happen.
Yep.
So this is a little bit of a disappointing year for Rutgers, but they've won their last 2, just like Kansas. They beat Minnesota and Maryland. They're 6-4. They finished with Illinois and Michigan State. And I just think that this is like what professional coaching looks like, what Lance Leipold and Greg Schiano are doing right now by pulling seasons back from the brink. Disappointing still. Both are going to wind up probably less than people wanted at the beginning of the year, but they did not let them fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
And that's because you are good at this job. You keep culture, you find ways, you continue grinding. And I think that what Leipold and Schiano are doing at the end of these 2 seasons are very similar. So a good for me on Schiano also.
Yeah, I'm good on both. I think the seasons got away from them for different reasons. Kansas is mostly, I think, a Jalen Daniels conversation. He just wasn't playing well.
I agree.
But they lost a couple of games that, like, success rate wise, they should have won anyway. Rutgers, just like in the middle of the season, had too many injuries. Like, they're just not built to overcome that, right? Otherwise, they've played good football, I think. So, I agree with everything you said. Yeah.
All right. Now back to another Kansas coach, Chris Klieman at Kansas State. Is clearly having some stuff that he's going through, and he talked about it. He talked about it going into the loss during the week before the loss to Arizona State. He said, I've had as tough a week as I've had, non-football related with some family things, and it puts a lot of things in perspective. I'm fortunate because I have a ton of people around me that believe in me. I have an AD that has my back. I've got a bunch of people in a lot of places that have looked out for the Klymans, and I'm thankful as heck. Then after the loss to Arizona State, he got emotional in his post-game news conference and said, I'm just hurting for these kids. It's been a really, really hard 2 weeks for me, and I feel awful for those older guys that have my back. Like I told them, I let them down, and it's been rough. So this is like real stuff. Mm-hmm. You still are paid to coach a team. You still have a job to do. He's making $5.25 million a year. That's 20th on our list of Northern head coaches out of the 24 that we know. I think he is a very good coach, and I see some frustration online with Kansas State fans. They won their rivalry in the Sunflower Showdown against Kansas. The game that beginning of the year in September that we thought was like, hey, what's happening there, where they almost lost at Tulane but found a way to win. You said earlier in the show, maybe Tulane's going to be the group of 5 rep there in the top 25. That actually looks like a great win for Kansas State now. They had to go on how often does a power conference team go on the road to a G5 team? And a good G5
not a
team.
good G5 team. Yeah.
And they found a way to win that. They've lost 2 straight and they're 7-3. And I get it, right? After they were right in the mix for the playoff, but I think he's a good coach and I hope everything is okay with him off the field, but they're also working in a young quarterback. They're in a Big 12 playoff eliminator game, 7-2 versus 7-2. Avery Johnson's first pass of the game is kind of like a feathered inside route when you need to rip it. And the corner was all over the receiver. The guy was never open, but the way he threw it made it worse. And the ball got tipped in the air and picked on the first pass of the game. And then it was off to the races and they were down 24-0. They're working in a young quarterback. Like next year, Avery Johnson won't make that throw like that. And I just think there's like, you can see the future. And I just would not want people to be mad or disappointed in Kansas State because they're still 7-3, but it's a come down from where we thought they were. So I'm still all the way good on Chris Kleiman.
Yeah, I'm all the way good too. I like the way he's handled Avery Johnson this year too. Like Avery Johnson has had an up and down season that you'd expect from a true sophomore starting for the first time, and Chris Kleiman I think has like done and said the right things in handling all of that, which I think will make Avery Johnson better in the future. Like it's not this season they had an opportunity and still have an opportunity to win the Big 12 if some things break their way, and it's a little disappointing that it's gotten away from them some, but it's also not just about this year, in my opinion, when you have a quarterback that young.
And you just have to remember, it's like Bill Snyder, legend. His first go around at Kansas State, after he got it rolling, they finished in the top 25 10 out of 11 years during the Bill Snyder heyday. It's remarkable. That's why they named the stadium after the guy and his family. Then when he came back the second time, Kansas State finished in the top 25 3 out of those 10 years, right? So it wasn't quite the same, but the guy's still a legend. Chris Kleiman, they weren't a top 25 team when he took over. First 3 years, they weren't. If they finish in the top 25 this year, which they still have a chance to do, if they win their last couple of games, it'll be 3 straight years in the top 25. Like this is bringing Kansas back to the heyday of Bill Snyder. And so like, let's just not Kansas State. That's not lose sight. That's not lose sight of the big picture just because they've lost a couple games in a row. Okay. Mm-hmm. Matt Rule, Nebraska. What do you think?
I'm worried about Nebraska. I'm worried about them not getting another win this year. Which would be not great. So I'm an okay. Matt Rule has not had the second year improvement that he has shown at his other previous college stops. He improved by 4 wins year 1 to year 2 at Temple. He improved by 6 wins year 1 to year 2 at Baylor. He is in jeopardy now of going 5-7 in year 1 and 5-7 in year 2 at Nebraska, which is not where Nebraska wants to be. And he has absorbed the we can't win close gamesness of Scott Frost to the point of now his winning percentage is worse than Scott Frost's by a hair in games that are decided by 1 score. He's now 2-9. The last 2 years, Matt Rule, with bowl eligibility on the line, 0-8, 7 of them 1 score games.
Hard to argue. And like, not in iffy, but sliding closer to iffier than good because of all the things you just said.
It's hard to be iffy when you have Dylan Raiola, right? But
yes, and
what that could become and what you're building. And now they have Daniel Holgerson. So like there's still chances to take steps forward here into the future. But this was supposed to be a step forward, and it doesn't feel like one.
Then you fire the offensive court, like they're grasping a little bit. A little bit. And then like the Dana Holgerson thing I said, what if Dana Holgerson, when we talked about it last time, is to Matt Rule what Chip Kelly has been to Ryan Day? Okay. Mm-hmm. Guy who's been a head coach, you bring him in to be the offensive coordinator, you're friends, like he's got your back. Okay, that could really work. What if Dana Holgerson is to Matt Rule what Phil Longo was to Luke Fickell, which is trying to maybe bring in a style of offense that does not fit in the culture of your program and is going to torpedo you?
Yeah.
Both possible? Like those are the 2 ends of the spectrum, right? Both possible. Mm-hmm. So, and they're grasping for it right now. So we'll have to see what this looks like the rest of this year and the next year. But both of us are just okay on Matt Rule. Kirk Ferentz, he's famous. we're both okay. They've got to get like long-term quarterback figured out, right? And so we understand Brendan Sullivan, who had been playing, he's now out for the year. It's just a mess. Some of it is, I mean, they've had like their top 3 quarterbacks all hurt. So some of it is out of their control, but like they also just need better quarterback play. And so a year ago, right, when he was still holding on to his kid running the offense, it was as iffy could be. Like, I don't like, what is this guy doing? So I still think Tim Lester was a substantive step up, but they, like in the modern era, still have like another step. That was step 1 into figuring out how to play offense in this era at Iowa. There is a second step to make, and they must make that this offseason. So this is 2 straight years. And again, the Cade McNamara injury is part of it, but going to Deacon Hill last year was off. This is like 2 straight years of just absolute chaos at quarterback, and they have to make sure that's not the case next year. So an okay for me.
Yep, me too, for all those reasons. Like almost everything else about the program seems like it's in a pretty good spot still with Kirk Ferentz. That's why he wins so much. But they have to get serious about quarterback. They have been unserious for far too long about that position.
Absolutely. All right, PJ Fleck at Minnesota. What do you think?
So I sent Mike an okay, and I actually meant to change it to good after like digging in more on some stuff. So that's my bad for not getting that in before the wire. I think they're good. They're 6-3 when no one expected them to be. This has been a good season for Minnesota, and PJ Fleck has had an excellent tenure. I think there took a step back last year, took a step forward this year. I like what he did with his defensive coordinator when he lost Joe Rossi when he wasn't expecting him to. It seems like he made a pretty good hire there with Corey Heatherman. And he did a nice job of addressing quarterback in the offseason. They got some guys to be excited about. So I think they're back on track as a program, and this has been a successful season for them. So I'm good with PJ.
Yeah, I'm glad you changed on this, because I've just been really impressed the whole time, and they just are sort of really working it out in real time. And they have, again, I think
expert producing, changing the graphic on the fly.
That's always the best in the biz. I am curious to see if they can give Penn State a game at home this week. And then I think Black Friday at Wisconsin is like a really interesting game. So, but I think they've really hit, like, Max Brosmer as a 1-year transfer, Drake Lindsay developing behind him. Like, I like the idea. Again, they're trying to evolve, I think, into, like, this may be, right, what Minnesota is doing offensively, trying to evolve and to throw it more without giving up on, like, sort of the run game roots might be actually what you would like to see Wisconsin do more of a version of, not as drastic as the Phil Longo thing. I think he's done a really good job. And there's been bumps along the way, but to a lesser degree than Oregon. They had really some stuff on the offensive line that they had to get figured out, and then I think they've been playing better on the offensive line. So a very solid good for me, and I'm glad to see that you changed your mind on that. Brett Bielema at Illinois. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Good. Like, I thought Illinois had a chance to be in a really bad spot, and instead I think this has been like a borderline amazingly successful season at Illinois across the board. Like, if they had managed to beat Minnesota at home, like, that would have been like, like, now you're just losing to 2 playoff teams, but like really, really fun year. Like the Kansas win at home, it was like, they beat Kansas. Then it was like, they beat Kansas. Now it's like, they beat Kansas. So working the portal, like Aaron Henry coming along as a defensive coordinator. Yeah. Like, I think there's just a lot of good in that program right now. No doubt about it. A good for Bielema.
Similar conversation, I think, to what's going on at Minnesota. I just think they took a momentary step back, and they're back on track. So I feel very good about it.
Okay. David Braun at Northwestern. I'm okay here. Would have been good in year 1. It's been a little sideways there. I guess Jack Lausch is the young quarterback they landed on. The quarterback idea at the beginning of the year, like, wasn't great. It's been, a weird year. They're playing on the lakefront stadium, and they, they've had some injuries and stuff, but like, did not continue the momentum of a year ago for sure. They didn't fall off a cliff, but like, it's okay. They set out a bunch of new stuff, like their new stadium that they're going to have, not for the 2025 season, but for the 2026 season. Like they're all excited about, and it seems like it's going to be cool. And I think that'll be great for Northwestern football. But like on the field this year, I think it's practically like the definition of okay.
Yeah, it's Northwestern football. It's good. It's adequate defense, sometimes bordering on pretty good defense, and offense that at times feels non-existent. But it was the botching of the quarterback plan for me that had me firmly in okay territory, because they just like let Brendan Sullivan walk without seemingly any idea of what they were going to do to make up for that. And now they're with Jack Lausch, who maybe is their guy of the future. I don't know. This is another team that I think is going to have to look in the portal again in the offseason for a better quarterback. So it's a tough job too, right? So I want to be cognizant of that as well. So I'm okay with David Braun.
It was like I think they thought maybe it was going to be Lausch, but then they brought in the transfer Mike Wright, and then Lausch didn't win the job in the preseason, and then Mike Wright wasn't the guy at all. And so we have to go fast, or we're going to have the very first show that starts with a 2 when it goes up on the podcast feed. Mike Loxley from Maryland, what do you got?
I'm iffy. I actually thought that the Rutgers game was a little bit of a kind of a bellwether on where things are and where they're going, because even if Maryland is down, that's a game that Maryland typically wins. That's a regional rivalry that Maryland has owned since both these teams joined the Big Ten. And I'm not trying to make too much of one result, but they lost 31-17. I don't think they're in a great spot. I thought beating USC was going to be a little bit of like a propulsion for them to finish the year strong, and it hasn't been. They're 4-5. They got to beat Iowa and Penn State to get bowl eligibility. I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm also iffy because like the athletic director kind of seems iffy based off what he said about Mike Loxley a couple weeks ago. So like I don't think Mike Loxley's on the hot seat. I think he has put himself in a position where they better take a step forward next year, or else he will be.
I thought this would be a step back reset year for them. I think it is a step back reset year for them, and I think Mike Loxley has earned that. So I think he helped reestablish kind of like a new bar at Maryland, and like they aren't living it up to it this year, but I think that's okay. And so I think I'll be very curious about the conversations a year now, right? A year from now, like Pat Narduzzi had a step back year last year. Kalani Sitake had a step back year last year, and now look what they've done. And so I think that's out there for Mike Loxley. So like to me, like no conversation about the future because he's earned the right to have a down year. And I think you could kind of see it coming, but now what? So I'm very curious to see it. So I'm okay. But next year, they're going to have to show like, okay, that was more of a blip. Yeah. Matt Campbell, what do you have? Iowa State head coach, Bill.
He's good. he is perfect for Iowa State. So I know that the season's kind of gotten away from him a little bit, but as long as he is at Iowa State, I would feel good about that partnership.
My biggest takeaway from this, just lining up the salaries, is underpaid. So like the only 4 guys in the North that we have their contracts coming into the year who are making less than Cignetti: Ryan Walters at $4 million, Matt Campbell at $4 million, Neal Brown at $4 million, Scott Satterfield at $3.6 million. And like, who is the outlier in that group? Like Matt Campbell making the same as Ryan Walters, Neal Brown, and Scott Satterfield. Like he should be higher than that. So like I think they're lucky to have him in this spot. Now, the one thing is he has like gigantic bonuses for winning games. So he does get like, as soon as he wins more than like 7 games, he gets like big steps up in raises. So that's base salary. So I don't want to hang on that too much, because he's going to wind up, I mean, closer to 5 or 5.5 million with the games they've won this year. But that actually almost makes me want to have a conversation about like, should every college football coach's salary structure be that? Like, okay, here's 4 million, but if you have like an awesome year, you can make 7 million. You know, but like we're paying for wins here. So I don't want to make it like he's totally underpaid, but he's got to earn it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So maybe that actually is a model for what people should do, but he's really good. Okay. Last one. So we're both good on Matt Campbell. Kyle Whittingham. What do you got for that? Utah.
I'm iffy on Kyle Whittingham, which, like, you know, he's a legend. He's one of the best I think we've seen do it in the modern era of college football with his consistency at Utah. It's just like it feels like it's going out with a little bit of a whimper, which is, I think, unfortunate for him. They're 4-6 again, like quarterback injuries. It's been a killer for them the last couple of years. Had to fire the OC. I just don't love. announcing coach in waiting, setting the table for this being like the sunset of Kyle Whittingham's career, and then this is how Utah is playing, especially offensively. So, like, he very much like Kirk Ferentz, I think, kind of gets to call his own shot clearly, but it's not in a great spot right now for the a very proud program that does not lose, is in the middle of a losing season that I imagine does not feel great for anybody.
I couldn't find the Matt Campbell thing when I was looking for it, but now I found it. He gets a $250,000 bonus for every win starting at 7 wins. So, nice. If they win 10 games, he'll make an extra $1 million over the $4 million base. So anyway, I was also iffy on Kyle Whittingham, and I would have been more iffy if they didn't compete so hard against BYU. But again, it's like there's no questioning. Again, we've had conversations where it's like, let's rank the best coaches in college football. We take Kyle Whittingham like in the top 5. And that is not the vibe right now. It feels like, again, maybe going out with a whimper. All right. That's it.
Can I read this? Like, we're 2 hours. It's fine. Who cares?
Okay, you're the chief. Let me clear it with the chief content officer. You're okay if we go over 2 hours?
Okay.
Thumbs up.
I don't love this quote. Jesse Temple covers Wisconsin for The Athletic is tweeting from Luke Fickell's press conference. Luke Fickell on who's going to call the plays for Wisconsin. Quote, "Why does it matter? The offense will be run, and those guys will do a lot of things collaboratively. I don't think it is really important as to who is calling it. I guess it gives you the ability to point a finger at somebody if that's the case."
Luke can get defensive. Defensive Luke is in the house. Okay. He's got to step back from that. Like there are like this is life in the big city. So people, why does it matter? Because it's interesting and people want to know about their team. And like we talk about college football, which helps the fans love it and make it super popular. So like, that's not like, you can't be there. Like, I know you almost beat Oregon. Like that's like, hey, we just had to make a program. Like we're going to give this guy an opportunity. Like this is not a batten down the hatches situation. Like Luke has had a ton of success. Like don't get on tilt over this, right? Like it's okay, but like the world's not out to get you because you fired your offensive coordinator. So I don't love that either. You don't love that? I don't love that.
Don't love it. It's a little, it's one thing if you're defensive and like backing your players or something like that, but it's like you screwed up, man. You got to own that you screwed up, and then like maybe give us a little something on what you're going to do, what's your plan moving forward.
Because it matters. Like, why are we asking? Because it matters. Yeah. Because it's fair for the fans to know like who's in charge of the most important aspects of their team when people are being paid a lot of money to do it. So like that's a very fair question. All right. So overall, my ratings of the 28, I had 16 good, 9 okay, and just 3 iffy. You had, I think, 5 iffy because we agreed on Ryan Walters, Neal Brown, and Kyle Whittingham all iffy. You also had Mike Loxley and Scott Satterfield iffy. So 5 iffies for you. That's right. But so like 3 iffies for me, 5 iffies for you. You said not that many iffies. That's pretty good for the North, right?
I think it's very good. Yeah.
Like I think, and we had the same number of goods. So we disagreed on a couple. I had Bill O'Brien good. You had him okay. I had Pat Narduzzi good. You had him okay. You had Jonathan Smith good. I had him okay. You had Jed Fish good. I had him okay. But we each had 16 good. And then you had 7 okay and 5 iffy. But again, like but overall, there's only like 3 to 5 fan bases who should have real concerning questions about their head coach. I think the North's in a good spot, right?
I think, the majority of our programs are in a very good spot, I think, with where they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have to be honest with ourselves as we make money and have careers judging people. Let's real quick do Northern College Football podcaster ratings. Bill Landis, good, okay, or iffy? I'm gonna lean. I'll lean good. I'll say good.
I was gonna say okay. I'm kind of hungry, so I don't know if I'm at my best when I'm hungry. So I'll say okay. I'll say okay.
Okay, and I am gonna say okay, and then like for Doug Lesmerises, but sometimes on Saturdays when I'm really feeling it, maybe a little iffy.
Oh no, I think that's good. I think that takes you from good to great when the swords come out.
When the swords and the SIGs come out? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Should we change the name of this podcast to Swords and SIGs?
Oh my God. I mean, I really like Kings of the North. And I think we've really kind of developed something here. But we have some, I mean, Philly Billy and French Vanilli is definitely out there. Fancy Stats and Pancake Balls is definitely out there. And Swords and Sigs, I mean, people would buy that merch too.
Yeah. We can sell some Swords and Sig shirts in Bloomington, let me tell you.
Yeah. So we are going to Ohio State, Indiana, both of us this week. So we will be there. So prepare for that. I will lay out my entire case of SEC myth busting on Tuesday. Dan Wetzel and Stephen Godfrey will both be with us on Tuesday. Wednesday, we will do basically the entire show of an Ohio State, Indiana big game breakdown. Zach Osterman, great Indiana beat writer from the Indy Star, will join us. We'll also do what you're watching, what you eating, what you're thinking, just to chill out a little bit on Wednesday from the serious football talk. And then a bunch of other great games on the Thursday picks and preview show. So that's what we're doing. Sorry we went long. It was a lot to talk about, and we had a good time doing it. So thanks to you guys for sticking around. Thanks to our great producer, Mike Urostowski, had a lot of graphics in that one, and we appreciate Mike grinding it out as always, and sometimes changing graphics on the fly. I wonder if they're asking about Tom Herman. Do you know if Tom Herman got asked about Bill during the Luke Fickell news conference? That would be my question.
I didn't see whether or not that was the case. No,
because Luke also has had not a huge history, but he'll hire some guys he knows, like most coaches.
Yeah,
and he knows Tom Herman. Okay, that's it for this edition of KOTN here, talking Northern Ball. Thanks again to you guys for being here. He is Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Fancy Stats and Pancake Balls.